Good evening, everyone. This meeting is for a public hearing. The statement of purpose would be, this public hearing is to consider the amendments to the Municipality of Yarmouth's Land Use Bylaw rezone PID number 9016938, located at 412 Sheboygan Point Road, from rural development to marine industrial, for the purpose of constructing a lobster holding facility. That's the statement of purpose. Is there any presenters in that regard?
No, Mr. Chair.
Is there any written submissions, Madam CAO?
No, Mr. Chair.
Call for council comments. Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'd like to step away from this one while we're making a decision on this Sheboygan Point.
You're declaring conflict?
Yes.
Okay, could we please note that in the meeting or the public hearing minutes? Item 6, call for staff comments. Is there any comments from staff?
Just in case you don't know, you're in front of us.
All right, thank you. Since there's no comments from staff, a call for adjournment. Yep. Moved by Councillor Nick Hilton, seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Motion on the floor for adjournment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. It's not going to cure itself tonight. All right, is everyone ready? Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the regular council meeting dated Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021, back to order. We were recently in an in-camera session, so could we all stand for the playing of O Canada, please? Thank you very much. Item number 6, approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda is circulated? If there's none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda is circulated. Moved by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Motion on the floor to approve the agenda as circulated. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The motion carried unanimously. Item number 7, if there's any declarations of conflict of interest when that item comes up, please state it to me and I'll make sure that the recording secretary records that in the meeting minutes. Item number 8, presentation of audited financial statements. Today we have with us 2 representatives from Grant Thornton, Ms. Banks and Mr. Ellis. Could you please come down to the presentation table and hit the red button on the microphone? I'll turn it on and you have the floor.
Excellent, thank you very much. So everybody should have a copy of the financial statements in front of them. So we did meet with your audit committee on August 31st, and we went through these statements in detail with them. So I'm going to give you a high-level overview, but available for questions if you have any. I'm going to go right directly to page 1, which is the independent auditor's report. So this is our letter from Grant Thornton to you as the council on the financial statements. So it's laid out in terms of responsibility. The first paragraph is our opinion paragraph, and it states that these are the financial statements for March 31st, 2021. The second paragraph is our formal opinion, which that the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality of the District of Yarmouth as at March 31st, 2021, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. That's the framework that you fall under. The second section is on the basis of our opinion. We have to follow very strict auditing standards when we do your audit, from the planning, the execution, and the completion. And we believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. The next section is the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance. So it is management's responsibility to prepare these financial statements in accordance with the Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. It's also management's responsibility to set the system of internal controls that they feel is appropriate in the circumstances to make sure that the financial data is being accumulated throughout the year. Management also has the responsibility to make an assumption that you are operating under the going concern, which means that you're able to fulfill your liabilities with your assets, and it's a 12-month test. Then those charged with governance are responsible for overseeing the municipality's financial reporting processes. So on page 2 is the auditor's responsibilities. So our objective is to obtain what we call reasonable assurance, and that is a high level of assurance, but it's not an absolute 100% guarantee that there couldn't still be an error in these financial statements. But to alleviate that risk, we conduct the following procedures. We identify and assess the risk of material misstatement. So we're looking for audit areas where there's the highest chance of risk, and that's where we're going to do a lot more of our audit work. We do audit all areas, but we do focus our attention in the areas of highest risk. We have to obtain an understanding of your internal control processes. We don't have to audit them or give an opinion on them, but we have to understand how they operate so that we know how the financial data is being accumulated. We also look at your accounting policies, first off, to make sure that they are in accordance with public sector accounting standards, and secondly, that the ones you've chosen are the ones that you are actually following. We also have to conclude that whether or not we agree with management's assessment of the going concern, which we do. Then we evaluate the overall presentation and structure of the financial statements, so not just the numbers, but all the notes at the back. We have to look at those as well and make sure they're appropriate. And then also, because these are consolidated financial statements and they do bring in your proportionate share of the operations of the entities that you control, we also have to make sure that supporting information has been obtained from each one of those controlled entities as well, and that that information is properly reflected in these financial statements. And then we communicate with those charged with governance on all the matters relating to the audit. So this is a clean audit opinion. We didn't identify anything while we were doing the audit which would cause us to have to modify the wording in the report. Page 3 is management's responsibility for financial reporting. So under public sector accounting standards, management in writing has to take responsibility for these financial statements. So this is their page. Page 4 is the consolidated statement of operations. So these are your revenues and your expenditures for the year, and you can see that the first column is the budget, 2021 actual and 2020 actual. And the budget is formulated under public sector accounting standards, so it will look a little bit different than the budget that you would have set at the beginning of the year for rate setting purposes. And it also brings in the proportionate share of the budgets of each one of the entities that you control as well. So it is also a consolidated budget. So just in total, from a revenue perspective, your original budget had been set at $10,686,889. You came in at $11,888,140, and the prior year was $11,152,272. So you're about $1.2 million higher than your originally planned budget, and you're about $735,000 higher than the prior year. If we just look at the top line is taxes, you can see that your original budget was $7,221,000 and you came in at $7,765,000 and last year was $7,348,000. So you've increased $400,000 over the prior year and you're $544,000 ahead of your budget. And there's two main areas that caused that increase. One was detransfer tax. So a year ago, your budget might have been conservative in that area, and then since then we know what has happened in your community, and your detransfer tax has grown quite significantly. But the other item is in your actual assessments as well. So while your rate would have remained consistent, your tax assessment would have gone up, so that would have increased a bit of your taxes as well. The next few categories are quite consistent year over year. So the next one that's a little bit different would be the conditional transfers from federal and provincial governments and its agencies. So those are the grants that you receive. You had originally set your budget at $579,000, came in at $882,000, and last year was $204,000. So this year had a big jump. There was a couple of pieces in there. You would have got an ACOA grant for the construction for Arcom Drive, so that's the biggest portion of it at $450,000. Then you also would have got a grant for the Safe Restart money. So your grant was $592,000, but you only spent $222,000 of that money, so the rest has been deferred, but the $222,000 is the amount that's in your revenue number. So those are the two biggest pieces of what's in that balance. The next item that looks a little bit different on a budget side only is the interest. You can see you set your budget at $156,000 and you came in at $481,000. And that's because there's no budget for the interest that's earned in your reserve accounts, which is a significant portion of the $481,000, but it is very consistent with the prior year balance. And then in rentals and events, so that would be partially your share of the pickup of the Mariner Center. So the revenues would have been down from the prior year, but still a bit ahead of what you had anticipated on a budget. So those are the main areas of the changes in your revenues. On the expenditure side, you had budgeted $11,298,833, and you came in at $10,938,696, and the prior year was $10,591,057. So you're actually up about $347,000 over the prior year, but you're less than your budget by $360,000. So you're over your budget in revenues and under your budget in expenses, so that's going to make your annual surplus higher this year. But in terms of the items that have changed on your expenses, under general government services, you had budgeted a little bit higher than your actual came in, and you're about $100,000 higher than last year. So there was costs associated with the election for this current year that you wouldn't have had in the prior year. Under transportation services, this year you would have paid $600,000 for your contribution to the ferry terminal, and last year's payment was $360,000. So that's the main reason for the $300,000 increase over the prior year. And you're actually very close to your budget on that category. Environmental health services, you can see that you're up over the prior year and up over your budget. And a lot of that has to do with costs associated with the Hebron and Dayton sewer. The costs came in higher this year from your billed portion from the town. So that's the main increase in that category. And the next couple are quite consistent as well. So the recreation and cultural services, you can see that your budget was $1,745,000. You came in at $1,511,000, and last year was $1,832,000. So obviously with COVID, there was fewer students that were hired, fewer activities, fewer events that went on, and as well, that would be the expenses related to the Mariner Center. We're actually down a bit as well because they were shut down for a period of time. So your annual surplus this year, you have a higher surplus, obviously, because you have more revenue and less expense, is $949,444 versus last year's $561,215. So very strong year. And then there was a very small gain on disposal of a capital asset. So your total for the year is $949,876. At the beginning of the year, you had accumulated surplus of $31,117,292, and we add in the annual surplus, and at the end of the year, it's $32,067,168. And if we turn over to page 5, That number also ties into the bottom number on this page as well. The accumulated surplus must also be included on your statement of financial position. So this is basically your balance sheet, your assets and your liabilities. The top half are what we call financial assets because they're readily convertible to cash to pay the bills. We leave the non-financial assets, everything you've invested in infrastructure, below the line because you're not in the business of selling them to generate cash to pay your bills. They're there to provide the services to your residents, so they stay below the line. So you can see that this year your financial assets are $16,735,000. Last year they were $14,951,000. So they have grown over the prior year by almost $2 million. And you can see the bulk of it is actually in your cash and cash equivalents, both in the restricted and the unrestricted. If you add them together, the increase is about $2 million. And then your taxes receivable, $699,000, actually much better than expected. Probably a year ago, we would have had concerns whether or not you'd have collection issues during COVID, but you actually improved on your position over the prior year. So that means that staff did a good job of collections and people were coming forward and making their payments. So those are the main categories in your financial assets that have had a change from the prior year. Under the financial liabilities, your total financial liabilities this year are $9,004,635. Last year, they were $7,733,989. So they have gone up over the prior year. And you can see there's a couple of areas there. So your payables and accruals have gone up over the prior year, and that's just a timing of when expenditures are incurred. And the next item that's larger that has increased is your deferred revenue. So that's money that you've received that you're going to spend on future projects. The largest portion of that is your gas tax money that you've received. So you have $3,315,000 you've received in gas tax money that you haven't actually spent yet. So that gets set aside as deferred revenue and it'd be brought in when you spend it on the project. But also this year, I already mentioned that you had the Safe Restart money. So you had the $592,000 that you received, but you only spent $222,000 of it. So there's $370,000 also left in here to be spent in the upcoming year. And that's the reason for the increase in that balance. So their long-term debt is increased over the prior year. So you did take out a new debenture during the year. But I should note that none of the subsidiaries have any long-term debt. So they do have accounts payable, but they don't have any external long-term debt. So that number all belongs to the municipality of Yarmouth. So those are the main categories in terms of changes. So what that leaves you with is a net financial asset position of $7,730,730 versus last year's $7,217,195. So it's grown by over $500,000. That's, again, a very strong position for your organization to be in. And then the section which is the non-financial assets, so that's your investment in your community, that's your infrastructure, all your assets. So you can see it's $24,063,193. So it has grown over the prior year. About $1.6 million that you've invested in your infrastructure during the year, and $1.3 million directly in the Arcom Drive complex for the upgrades that you've done there. That's the biggest portion of those increases. So your total non-financial assets are $24,336,438. Again, your accumulated surplus of $32,067,168. So that number is a large number, but you have, like I said, invested in your infrastructure, $24 million of that amount. And then the rest is money that you're generating to help pay for your reserves, because it is a requirement under the Municipal Government Act that you do set aside money every year in your reserves for future capital projects or future operating expenses. So that's the difference between the two. And then just for information purposes, of your $32 million, $7 million came in from your controlled entities. That's their contribution towards your accumulated surplus. So those are the two most important pages. Page 6 and page 7 are just continuities. Page 6 is the continuity of that net financial asset position. So what's interesting on this page is that you will note in years when you spend a significant amount of money on purchasing new capital assets or investing in your infrastructure, your change in your net financial asset will not be as large as in years when you don't spend as much on capital. So this year you did generate the $513,000 to get you to the ending balance of $7.7 million. And then page 7 is the continuity of your cash balance. And it starts with your annual surplus, and then it's the changes in when you collect your receivables, when you pay your payables, when you get money from deferred revenue. So you did generate $1,966,000 more in cash this year, but a good portion of it did come through the Safe Restart money and your gas tax money that's being deferred. And then you did spend a significant portion on your capital assets. So the remaining are notes and supporting schedules, and I did go over them in detail with your audit committee, answered all the questions at that time. So there's nothing in here that I was going to go over in detail tonight, just to let you know that these are the notes and supporting schedules.
All right, is there any questions from any council members? Deputy Warden.
Well, not a question, but just a comment. I was glad to see your presentation and hear that we're in good financial condition. Reserves are healthy, and certainly I'm looking forward to spending some of those in I guess a prudent, conservative way to get some of the infrastructure projects that we need done in the municipality to serve the residents. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Warden. I heard you say this word twice, strong position. I'm very proud to hear that the Municipality District Government Council and staff is keeping a very close eye on public funds. There's a lot of big projects that we have in the future that we're certainly in a strong position, as you said, to be able to move forward with. So if there's no questions from any committee members, I would entertain a motion to accept the motion from the Audit Committee from August 31st. Deputy Warden.
So I'll move that the Municipality District of Yarmouth accept the consolidated financial statements dated March 31st, 2021 is circulated.
Okay, a motion on the floor. I have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Is there any discussion on that motion, Madam CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a slight recommendation that the wording of the motion be approve rather than accept.
Okay. Is it okay with the seconder? Any discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Council, and thank you very much for coming in, giving us that good news. Moving on to item number 9, approval of the minutes. You all have that in your package. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Daniel Allen, you have the floor.
Yes, I make a motion to approve the Committee of the Whole minutes from August 11th, 2021, and to approve the regular council minutes from August 11th, 2021.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item number 10.1, second reading of amendments to the tax reduction bylaw. Madam CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we received no correspondence or no inquiries on this. And this, again, is just to have the bylaw comply with your previous decision to include the Highland Gun Club PID assessment account number 10885299 and to reduce it from commercial to residential.
Deputy Warden.
So I'll move that council approve tax reduction bylaw T-08301 as presented.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item number 10.2, second reading of rezoning of 412 Shawgogan Point, PID number 901-69830. Yes, Councillor Cushion.
Should I declare a conflict on this one too? Step
Yes,
away?
you will. Please note in the minutes that Councillor Lauren Cushing is declaring a conflict on this item 10.2. I'll call him back as soon as we're done discussing it. So this is all in regards to the public hearing that we just finished. What is the wishes of council? Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
Yeah, given that it's a recommendation from PAC, I'll move that council approve the second reading of an amendment to the land use bylaw rezoning PID 90169-830 from rural development to marine industrial.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called on that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. I'm going to call back Councillor Lauren Cushing back to the table. And in regards to that last item we just passed, that is just filed with the province for their records, correct, Madam CAO? All right, moving on. Item 10.3, Public Works Truck Tender Request for Decision. Madam CAO, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, at the July council meeting, I came to council with a written request for decision on a procurement process we undertook for 3 new vehicles for the municipality. And in that request for decision, I had recommended that we reject the bid on the half-ton truck that was intended for the Public Works Department, and we went back out to tender. And so just to refresh everybody's memory, so the original procurement closed on July 6th. We'd only received 1 bid for that vehicle, and it was over budget, so we rejected it. We went back out to tender in August. We received 3 bids ranging in price from $44,160 and change to $56,197 and change. The budget is $45,000. We received a complying low bid of $44,160.70. So it's my recommendation that the District of Yarmouth accept the bid price of Bruce Chrysler for $44,160.70 plus HST.
What is the wishes of council? Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
I'll move that we accept the bid presented by our CAO, read in the public record, from Bruce Chrysler for the pickup truck.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.4, recommendations from the Committee of the Whole. 10.4.1, November Committee of the Whole meeting date. You all have that recommendation? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you. I move that the municipality of the District of Yarmouth approve the November Committee of the Whole meeting date being moved to November the 10th, 2021 at 2:30 in reflection of the Remembrance Day holiday on November the 11th.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. A motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.4.2, FCM Frontline Solutions. You all have that in package. That was a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole. What is the wishes of council? Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Right, I'll move that the municipality district of Yarmouth accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to support the ask from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities regarding the Frontline Solutions Initiative.
The motion on the floor, do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.4.3. There was a motion from the Accessory Advisory Committee. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recommend that the municipality of the District of Yarmouth accept the revisions to the Accessibility Advisory Committee terms of reference to read that it consists of 2 municipal councillors and up to 4 additional community members.
Motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.4.4, congratulation letters to the new Premier and Cabinet Ministers. And I also believe that should also be worded along with our MLA, Zach Churchill. Yeah. So what is the wishes of council? Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we send letters of congratulations to the new Nova Scotia Premier, ministers, and MLA. And I'm just wondering if we could add our MP, Chris D'Entremont, since this follows the federal election.
Yes, you may. So there's a motion on the floor to send congratulation letters to the new Premier, Cabinet Ministers, our MLA Zach Churchill, and MP-elect Chris D'Entremont. Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Before I mention anything, I believe I had a note to write that down to add that to the agenda, so thank you very much, Councillor Durkee, for adding that in. I sometimes have too many things on the go and not enough brain power to make sure it all falls in place sometimes, so thank you very much for that. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.4.5. Southwest Nova Scotia Regional Discussion on Housing. You all have that in your package. What is the wishes of council? This was in regards to setting up meetings with the mayors and wardens of the Tri-County area. So, what is the wishes of council? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recommend that the municipality of the District of Yarmouth that the municipality of the District of Yarmouth respond to the town of Digby and move forward with the request to
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Is there any discussion on that motion? Before I take that question, as we have all heard in our last municipal elections, we've heard it in the provincial election, and we've also heard it from all party leaders in the last federal election. So housing's been a big issue, not only in our small community of the municipality of Yarmouth, but all across Canada. So we're certainly going to sit down and try to come up with some solutions to help everybody that's in need. So, is there any more discussion on that? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, motion carried unanimously. Moving on, item 10.4.6, amendments to the Heritage Incentive Rebate Program, Policy H-048-21. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recommend that the municipality of the District of Yarmouth amend the Heritage Incentive Rebate Program Policy H-048-21 for approval.
A motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.4.7, a grant application from the Yarmouth County Farmers Market. Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make the motion that we support the ask from the Yarmouth Farmers Market for the amount of $4,300 to be allocated in next year's grant process, conditional upon ACOA's approval, and for Modi to provide a letter of intent to the farmers market.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Is there any discussion on this? Councillor Daniel Allen, your microphone is up first. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had stepped away, I had to leave the meeting, maybe the whole meeting before this was brought up. So I'm just looking for a little bit of background, if I'm allowed to ask that at this point. So a couple questions that came to mind was, I wasn't there, so who owns the building that we're investing in? I see they apply, and I'd just like a little bit of background on this, if at all possible. Maybe you can help me out,
Yes,
Madam
you sir.
CAO.
Yes, you may. Madam CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Allen, the applicant is the group that operates and delivers the farmers market to our region. The owner of the building is a different private citizen, and they're working on a new 10-year lease, and they're looking to develop some partnerships to address some improvements in the building that benefit specifically the farmers market.
So are the owners contributing to this at all?
We don't have that information yet.
We don't have that information yet. Okay. Did we ask for that information? Did we ask, did we?
We did not ask for that information.
And how much is the total project?
Just let me take a look at the application. I think I heard Councillor Hilton mention. Just take me 2 seconds here to pull it up.
These were questions I had
Yep.
for committee of the
Oh, no,
whole,
no
but
problem.
I didn't make it to this
That's
part.
quite all right, Councillor. I have a couple comments after you mentioned, after the rest of the council as we go around. I'm trying to give you the exact number. I have it here in paper form. Maybe it would have been easier to look it up on my computer.
Yep, it's coming right here. Oh, gosh. Total budget is $52,000.
Okay. And they have applied to ACOA for,
I haven't seen their ACOA application. It would, typically, an ACOA project is somewhere, depending on the funding stream and who's applying, it's somewhere between 50% and 75% dollars.
okay, thank you.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we discussed at the Committee of the Whole, but just to state my point, I was one of the ones who voted against it at Committee of the Whole on the sole purpose that this is out of next year's budget, and I understand that, and I completely support the farmers market. However, when we go through the grants to all of the applicants, we do it on a case-by-case basis, but we have a set pot of money, and I think that, when I look back at what we did this past year for grants, I'm not sure we actually allotted the entire amount of anyone's ask, and so for me to say I'm willing to give the entire ask without seeing the other asks, that would be the sole reason why I would be voting against it.
Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we did discuss ownership of the building at Committee of the Whole, as well as the ask to the property owner if they were going to contribute to this project, and some of the discussion that we had was that they do pay minimal rent, like they do contribute to the farmer's market on a monthly basis. Also, this is dependent on if ACOA provides the money, and some of the research that they would do would be dependent on those same questions, so that they wouldn't award the money if they didn't feel that there was adequate reason to do so. So I think they're using our money to leverage 75% more money to do the $52,000 project, along with an ask to the town, I think, as well. So I think it's a reasonable ask.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I just like to further comment on Councillor Hilton. It was my understanding, in order for them to apply for ACOA for funding, they needed some funding partners, and this is one of the reasons why we stepped up to the plate, so that they would be able to go to ACOA and say, all right, we got the municipality of Yarmouth, they're going to fund us too, so it just helps us, and probably the town of Yarmouth will be doing the same thing. I'm just assuming that, but that was my understanding of it anyway, that if ACOA, seeing that we were going to support them, they would support them, they would, would look in their favor too for support, so thank you.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Yeah, my argument for voting in favor of the motion is, I guess, largely the same as Councillor Hilton's and Councillor Cushing's, in that it's a good opportunity to leverage a relatively small piece of funding from our coffers to get a fairly good sized project done for the community and the community. So for those reasons, because certainly ACOA is going to adequately vet the project and ensure that the monies are spent properly. I'm providing some trust and faith in that process as well. I'll be voting for the motion.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Do you want to?
You have to turn off your mic was up next. Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to comment that I think our farmers market is a huge asset to our region, and that by supporting this, we are supporting a lot of vendors in the municipality of the District of Yarmouth, and lots of shoppers that go there. So I do feel it's an extremely important piece of infrastructure. I know what they are doing is hoping to winterize the additional building that's there with a rock floor, and I believe what they wanted to do was put in a cement floor so that it's first of all more accessible for everyone, and that they can use it year round, and that'll increase the number of vendors that can go. So I will be supporting this motion.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you. Further to what Councillor Durkee said, I think 19 of the current 25 vendors are from the municipality of Yarmouth, and I do believe, but not 100% sure, that the owner of the building lives in the municipality of Yarmouth as well. So it's our only farmers market. They don't ask much from this council, and although I don't agree completely with how we distribute grant money, I wouldn't want to hold it against the farmers market, our process. Okay, thank you.
There's no more mics on but I do have one thing to say. I just want to clarify, is this motion that's currently on the floor, was it contingent, or was the dollar amount from next year's grants? Okay, I'm just making that clear. In the last committee of the whole, I had expressed my opposition to the motion. I think it's a great project to help out local farmers. It was also noted how many local people, local farmers and artisans attend that function, or not function, but that building. But my big concern was, and it still is they do not own the building. The Municipality District of Yarmouth, in previous grant applications, we've turned down applications because the property was not owned by the people putting forward the application. And for that reason alone, I cannot support the motion that's on the floor. So if there's no more discussion on the motion, question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried, a vote of 4 to 3. Would you like your names recorded or not? And me as well. So it's Councillor Allen, Councillor Hurlbert, and the Warden John Cunningham. Item 10.4.8, near miss at Johns Cove Beach. We have 3 motions that come from Committee of the Whole. We'll move on. The first one, 10.4.8.1, a motion, a letter to the province. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Lauren Cushion.
Yes, I'd like to, excuse me. I would like to make a motion that council write a letter of concern to the province asking who is responsible for Johns Cove Beach and what can be done to improve safety.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. My apologies. Anyone watching this video, there's glass here, and there's 3 pieces of glass that I try to look through, so sometimes I don't see them. There's a lot of double reflections and triple reflections, so my apologies. Seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.4.8.2, a motion briefing note. What is the wishes of council? Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'll move that the municipality of the District of Yarmouth ask that the CEO provide a briefing note to better inform council of the issue at Johns Cove Beach and what can be done there to improve safety. So, you know, a briefing note to us in the future to identify the safety issues and to recommend some remedy to it, whether it's contacting particular individuals, meeting, or doing something about it ourselves. So.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.4.8.3, motion re-certificate of appreciation. That was a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole. Councillor Lauren Cushion, you have the floor.
Yes, I would like, well, excuse me again. I would like to make a motion to council that we issue a certificate of appreciation to the Beshers for their heroic act, although Dave Besher was the one who did the actual rescue. It was his wife Nancy who alerted Dave of this near miss.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.4.9, social media policy S-088-21. What is the wishes of council? Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
All right, I'll move that the municipality of District of Yarmouth approve social media policy S-088-21.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to comment that the MGA covers a lot of our code of conduct, or does cover our code of conduct, and we have our own code of conduct. And at this point, I don't feel that we need a specific social media policy for us, and I just feel it's going to restrict a lot of individuals from having their say. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we had quite an extensive conversation at the Committee of the Whole about this policy. I too will be not voting in favor of this motion. I feel it limits the say of an elected official and leaves us open to criticism from other councillors where we, like Councillor Durkee said, we're governed by other legislation. So I am not in favor of this document. Thank you.
Counselor Daniel Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, on the other hand, am the other way. I feel that we should have these type of policies in place. I realize that the MGA has a code of conduct, and I'm going to use the term loosely, but it covers us quite well. I don't see any harm in us having our own policies. We set out for staff to do this originally as a council to bring a social media policy back to us, and they did. I don't feel that it's putting any extra restrictions on. It's just self-governance, which I believe is an important part of being here. So I guess if you're not doing anything wrong, if you're not doing the crime, you don't have to do the time. So I just, you know, it doesn't matter who makes the law. If the law is there, if we're not doing anything wrong, we shouldn't have to worry about it. But this is just a way for us to be governed. Policy is great to have. We have other policies that help us out. We've used them in the past as far as policing, you know, different things that have happened in council, and I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you very much. There's no more microphones flashing. I do have something to say about this. I was probably one of the main reasons why we have the social media policy in front of us. I believe that every councillor has the right to say what's on their mind. You do represent a district. Also in this social media policy, it does state that you can say, but you have to have the caveat, in my opinion. When I was a councillor in previous terms, I was unsure if I was allowed to actually do that, because sometimes my decisions, as everyone knows, is most generally at the times way back then was contrary to what council decision, and I felt like my voice needed to be heard, and I always felt like I was walking on eggshells like that when I did say something dissenting. So that language is in here. I think it's a step forward. If this policy is not working, we can certainly bring it back and look at it and work on it, but we should have something. I know the MGA was, in regards to the code of conduct was mentioned, that code of conduct's a little vague. We can add, or if we decide as a group that we needed to add something, or this is not working, we can easily look at this later down the road and strike it down or change it or do something different. But I believe there should be something on the books in that regard. So that's all I have to say. If there's no other microphones, Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Jarrett. Just some final words on one statement and a question about another. 4.3, it says, resist the urge to post everything. Emails from staff or citizens are written for a specific audience, for a specific purpose. Councillors could be doing their readers a disservice by sharing information without context. Therefore, cutting and pasting of emails is not permitted. Okay, the cutting and pasting part I understand, but resist the urge to post everything. Really, that is my decision, what I choose to post and inform my constituents of. And I do find it very restrictive, and I find it leaves it up to you guys to question me at any point of what I post in my code of in this document. The last statement brings it right back to code of conduct. So why have additional language limiting what I can say when the code of conduct is doing that, and the punishment for this document is through the code of conduct. So if when developing the code of conduct, they thought this was an issue, they would have put it in there. If they didn't, I want to be able to freely represent the people in my community and let them be the judge of what I say or do.
Councillor Daniel Allen.
And that's a good point, Councillor Hilton, and I guess it goes to interpretation, because I'm not seeing this as limiting you. I mean, it's not telling you what you can and can't say, it's just trying to keep it so that, I guess if you're going outside of this, you're going outside of the code of conduct, so I don't see that it's adding extra restraints. It's just us self-governing based kind of on the code of conduct. So if what, and I'm just going to use this as an example, like, you know, we've said it before, and everyone around this table has their own opinion, and nobody would expect otherwise, and you should be able to state your own opinion. But I guess if it's something that is outside the lines of the code of conduct and outside the lines of this policy, like, I don't see this as extra restrictions. I just see it as a policy that we've put on ourselves, essentially just reaffirming the code of conduct. So I guess it's open to interpretation that way. So that's how I view it. That's why I'm in favor of it.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to comment that according to our Director of Corporate Services, that there aren't a lot of social media policies to be found when she was doing the research. So it means that other municipalities do not have, not many have them. I also feel that the more policies we have, the more complicated things get. So that if we are covered by our code of conduct, then that should be enough.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Warden.
Yeah, I mean, just, I guess philosophically, I'm a tremendous proponent of free speech. But I don't think this in any way puts any additional limits on that free speech. I think that the last thing any councillor wants to do, no matter which council table they sit around, is to sanction another councillor or go down that road. So I don't see any language. You know, I guess the last point that was brought up is sort of a cautionary tale. Posting everything, it's not saying don't, it's saying resist the urge. So if you're out there posting everything, you may run into issues with folks in the community, or I don't know. I guess I'm kind of I'll remain kind of silent on that one. But no matter, I don't think that's a major piece of the policy. And again, it's a policy. It's a guide for behavior. And I think you know, people that govern well govern via policy. It's pretty clear that that's what our role is. We're policy making and bylaw making organization, or I guess body. It's a better word. So given that, I'll be voting in favor of the motion. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Seeing no more microphones, I do have to say this for the last thing that said, this was hotly debated at the committee of the whole, and I didn't expect no less. So, Councillor Nick Hilton, this will be the third time you're speaking. I guess I'm going to have to ask Council's consent to allow him to speak the third time. Yeah, everyone's head nodded. Councillor, you have the floor.
4.6, social media posts by councillors are subject to the FOIPOP Act. Is that taken from anywhere? I guess that's a question to the CIO, or is that something that was added to this specific document?
Right, so great question, Councillor Hilton, and through the chair to you. Most of the content in this document, to Councillor Durkee's point about it being the frontier of policy development for elected officials, actually comes by way of work that the Director of Corporate Services did with our solicitor. So when we had the workshop and you spoke with your solicitor about these types of themes and kind of doing some investigating, he was actually the person who said that your social media posts would be FOIP-poppable.
Thank you.
Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? A vote of 4 to 3, motion is carried. Would you like your names recorded? So Councillor Durkee, Councillor Hurlbert, and Councillor Hilton all voted in the negative. Thank you very much, Council. And speaking of policies, as per Council Procedural Policy C-028-19, I need a motion to extend the regular council meeting by 1 hour. Moved by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Before I go on, and people might be wondering why I'm asking to extend by 1 hour, the procedural policy that I just stated, our regular council meetings are scheduled for 2 hours, and any extension needs to be approved by council via motion. So that's the reason for the motion on the floor. So if there's no discussion on that motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, motion carried unanimously. Item 10.5, trying to say two things at the same time. Item 10.5, Flag Policy F-046-21. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you had asked to have this added to the agenda. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, CAO, I'd just like to have an update on where we are on the flag policy. I know it's been hotly debated, and I think one of the things when residents ask me how I like my job, I said it's great, except the wheels of politics grind slowly, and I feel like the wheels of politics have ground really slow on the flag policy, and no negative reflection on staff, but I'd just like to have an update and when we're actually going to see another reiteration to move it forward. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Council and Councillor Hurlbert in particular, the last instructions from Council were to take the flag policy in response to a concern that was raised and engage with some experts or professionals in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we've done that, and just last week, Darlene did receive her last written response on that. So you can expect to see the draft come forward again at Committee of the Whole.
Perfect, thank you.
Any more? Hearing none. Item 10.6, Land Acknowledgement. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, your microphone is still on, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I was looking back through, because I couldn't remember the exact date that I actually made the motion to have a land acknowledgement, and it was July 14th, and I understand that summer has happened, and, we have had vacations, and, things have to happen. Just wondering if there's an update on the land acknowledgement?
Go ahead and see.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, yep, the update on the land acknowledgement is in developing draft language, we again reached out to some of those experts and professionals we've been building a relationship with, and the piece where we're working through kind of a final draft to bring to council is just checking in with Acadia First Nation. Okay. So I had a meeting with the band manager, and we talked about the initiative, and he has connected a member of his staff with our Director of Corporate Services, and I know that sometime this week or early next week they're going to connect, and so we're hoping to have a draft for you at Committee of the Whole.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, moving on. Item number 11, 11.1, CAO's report. You all have that in your package. Is there any questions for the CAO? Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
Well, it's very, very lengthy, and I guess a testament to the amount, and that's a good thing. Not being critical of the report's length. I guess it's a testament to how much our team is getting done together. When I say team, I mean council and staff. Obviously we need to collaborate, work together, and the synergy seems to be good in terms of getting the projects done and getting the work done. I know that we'll be hearing a little bit about the active transportation, you know, along the Milo stretch, but just maybe a little bit of an update on the latest status of the 3 projects, Fort Maitland, Hebron, and Dayton projects in terms of the RFP or the, yes, request for proposal. Yeah, please.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. The draft tender documents for those 3 active transportation projects are done. Actually, just on Friday last week, we got approval from Department of Environment for the design. We have met with the project engineers, and we are going to release the tender pending approval from Nova Scotia Public Works, and by pending approval, I mean we will release the tender, but it will have the caveat in there that any award or any project would require that approval as well. So we're going to move ahead. I'm being told by the engineers, the consulting engineers, that approvals from the province, largely due to COVID and of course the election, we're anywhere between 4 and 6 months to get some approvals. So I think we've done well on the approval from Environment, and we've met with TIR, Nova Scotia Public Works. We've walked the project with them. We're aware of their verbal feedback, so we're just waiting for the formalities, but the tender is going to release anyway, with the caveat that the project would require that approval. So I'm thinking one day next week the tender will go out, and of course we'll have that on our website and on the Nova Scotia procurement website.
Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am looking, and the reason my head is sideways is because the document, when we get to the strategic plan part of things, I can't, it's not the right format. So we were talking about cell service, and I made a motion that, to ask staff to come, to move forward with some, possible funding. And I see there was correspondence to Develop Nova Scotia about trust dollars that could go possibly towards cellular projects, and the conversations with Bell. Do we have through you to the CAO, have we had any response back from them on those asks?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. There were 3 pieces of correspondence under that initiative, 1 to Develop Nova Scotia, 1 to Bell, and 1 to the Western Regional Enterprise Network. Although we don't have a formal response from the REN, I am aware that self-service is a topic that they're exploring as they develop their next strategic plan. We have no response at all from Develop or Bell.
Thank you.
Actually, to add to that, I do know that Bell did build a cell tower out in the Kemptville area. It's not up and running yet, but they did build one. I do know there's one up there. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. And hopefully soon that will get lit up and make communications a little easier out in that area. Deputy Warden.
Yeah, just something just occurred to me, and again, I've been on the campaign trail through many municipal elections by this point in time. But people often ask the question, well, what does council do? And for those folks that are watching, and for anybody around the council table that wants to pass this on to people when they ask that question, I'd advise them to take a look at the CAO's monthly report. I mean, if you look at that, were to review that, you'd very quickly, including the financial statements, strategic plan, and all of those important projects that our CAO is reporting out on. And it's a little lengthy, but if somebody really wants to know what we're up to is council and getting done through staff and our other partner organizations, I think it's a very, very good place to start, and you'd know a lot about what we're doing and what the municipality's doing by reviewing that. So I'd encourage everybody that's watching on via technology tonight to look at that document and give it some thought. So those would be my comments. Thanks.
Well, since there's no more microphones flashing, I'd entertain a motion to accept the CAO's report. Moved by Councillor Daniel Allen, seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Motion to accept the CAO's report. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.2, low income tax exemption late application request. You all have that in your package, Madam CAO?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your package is an excerpt from your policy on low-income exemptions, and there's a provision in section 2.8 that allows council to accept a late application beyond the due date in extenuating circumstances. So due to privacy reasons, of course, I don't have a public document to give you because applicants file their income tax information with us, their names, all their personal information. But we do have one late application. It's from an individual who really didn't have an awareness of the program, so they applied late. They do qualify for the program. I just require council's permission.
Deputy Warden.
So I'll move that the Municipal District of Yarmouth extend permission to CAO Victoria Brooks to award the low-income exemption to the person that she's described tonight, but not given away the identity of, obviously.
A motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. It's the first one I see. So a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 11.3, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Councillor Patty Durkee.
On September 30th, it's in a commitment to reconciliation, ensuring that the tragic history and ongoing legacy of residential schools is never forgotten. The Government of Canada passed legislation to make September 30th a federal statutory holiday called National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Nova Scotia has adopted this, and what I'd like to know is what if we have plans to support this. Either in terms of a day off, raising a flag, how are we going to identify this day?
Thank you very much, Councillor. CAO?
So, Mr. Chair, I can certainly speak to the operational side of things, and it would be council's prerogative on any kind of community side of things. So our policy manual states now that when there's a federally observed holiday, we observe it as well. So our staff already know that that day is being set aside for individual reflection and to remember those victims at the residential schools.
Okay, thank you, Madam CIO, and I'd like to add, I know we don't have our flag policy rejigged, but I'm just wondering if there's any way that we could raise a flag in place of the municipal flag in commemoration of this holiday.
CAO?
So by motion of council, that could happen.
Okay, so then I would like to make a motion that we raise the flag, and I don't know what it's specifically called, to commemorate the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September the 30th.
A motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
So, Mr. Chair, the only thing I'll just say is I'm not sure what the federal protocol is going to be that day if our flags go to half-mast. So if you happen to see the flags at half-mast, it's because I've confirmed that that's the federal protocol.
Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
So, are we raising you say we want to put up a flag of reconciliation in place of our municipal flag for that day? Typically, I would probably want to stick to I'm kind of policy-oriented person, but I've got to say that I think I will be supporting this. It's not something I will be supporting, you know, I don't want to be back here for all different groups, but I believe this is a hugely important piece of Canada, so for that reason, I will be voting for this.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, when I, hear after the federal government said, this was a, federal holiday, and I heard other provinces who are saying, no, we're not going to recognize it because they do have that prerogative. It saddened me, and it saddens me to think that we even have to have this day. I'm glad we do to reflect, and it's not a real, for me, it's not a day off. It's, any of those holidays are never a day off. I am wondering, probably we need to do something, and I know there's a motion on the floor, but I'm just thinking forward, is there something that we can put on our social media page, you know, if there's some links or some videos or something that are not copyrighted. And I don't know if we have to do that through motion or if that's just a consensus that we, you know, we not only reflect with, you know, the flag, but we reflect, you know, some way, you know, that day to give other people who may be, you know, following us or other people on social media, you know, some ways to reflect, I guess.
So, Mr. Chair, it's a fairly easy amendment to add a little bit of language to the motion that our electronic media provide resources to help people reflect.
So are you willing to make that a motion?
I'm willing to make the motion
The
to...
amendment
the
to
men- to amend the motion as stated.
Okay, there's an amendment on the main motion. Do I have a seconder on that amendment? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Is there any discussion on the amendment of the main motion?
No? Question called?
Question being called. All those in favor on the amendment on the main motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, back to the main motion that's on the floor. Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through a lot of research and, you know, this council bringing diversity and inclusion to the forefront for the municipality of Yarmouth, you know, these are, you know, I was told that it's okay to have difficult conversations and not knowing what to say, and sometimes that's how I feel, and that's okay, but I think this is a great first step and the right flag to raise first, and it's a good, and hopefully when we see the flag policy, I personally feel, or my opinion, this would be in line with that, so I will be supporting the motion and also the amendment to include some social media presence. So thank you very much, Councillor Durkee, for making that a motion, and Sherry, Councillor Hurlbert as well.
Deputy Warden.
Right, I think it's a good motion. It's a shame that we didn't have our flag policy ready for this time, but having said that, we're doing our due diligence around it to make sure that it's right and it's vetted through all the right channels to make it the best policy we can make it when it's adopted. Having said that, I'm certainly in favor of the motion. The only thing I would like to, just with the understanding that we're doing this because of for reasons of it's the right thing to do, I think, plus the expediency of the thing. Obviously, it's coming up next week, so we'd have to do it by motion if there's no policy in place. But the policy will, this is being done this one time this way because we don't have a policy, and any future celebrations, flag raisings will be in adherence with the flag policy that we adopt. Is that my understanding? Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Question being called on the main motion. Signify. I just had a total loss of my train of thought. So, question being called on the main motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried unanimously. I do have one question in regards to this note that's on here that Councillor Patty Durkee, does anybody know if there's anything going on in the Acadia First Nations in regards to this day? Yes, I certainly would like to know if there's something going on at the Acadia First Nations. If there is, if the CAO does find something, can you please circulate that to all councillors? I know it's a day for either community events or quiet reflection. I would like to, if there's something going on there, I personally would like to head out on that day. I don't have that day off, but in the afternoon I will be able to make it if there is something going on, or if anybody hears through social media something that's going on in a different community, please share it around amongst yourselves. Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Durkee, for adding this to the agenda. Okay, item number 12, correspondence for action. Correspondence from Catherine Winkler, re-message in a bottle. You all have that in your package? What is the wishes of council? And this is in regards to, pull it up on one of my computers here. Sorry, Councillor Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure about anybody else, but I found this request actually quite confusing, and I'm not 100% certain as to what they're actually asking. So if there's someone who can clarify that, they're talking about writing a letter from the present to the past to one of the 1,196 Black loyalists who left the province because of broken promises by officials and cruel conditions that made life intolerable. I'm not sure what they actually mean from present to the past, and who is to take responsibility for this. So if anybody has any clarification on that, I would appreciate that.
Go ahead, Madam CEO.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure how far down the road of clarity I can take you. So it's my understanding that there's an initiative that's going to culminate in an event at Pier 21. And the notion is that somewhere between 1792 and 2021, we've learned something. And so we could write a letter that could be a message in a bottle that could say to those individuals who had that lived experience, what you went through wasn't for nothing, because here's what we've learned. Here's where we are today. They could be deeply personal reflections from an individual elected official, or they could be corporate in terms of from the municipality. And it's my understanding that any submissions to the initiative will be used on the day of the event, but they'll also be curated in a exhibit. So it is a bit abstract, 'cause, you know, it reminds me of, and I don't want to make light of the initiative at all, but it reminds me a little bit of the Back to the Future movie, like you're back and forth, you're back and forth. But I think the point is to demonstrate that we've learned something, and to correspond to those individuals who went through that and who had to leave Nova Scotia.
I never knew we were going to get a Marty McFly reference, but thank you.
And I don't need to diminish at all.
No. So, I'm also unclear, as Councillor Durkee stated, was there a time limit? Does anyone remember reading through that?
That's why I put it in the last minute, Mr. Chair. So if anybody around the table or the municipality itself wants to submit, it has to be there by October 13th, which is like just the day after our next
So would
meeting.
council like to submit something, provided that,
And it can be individual, Mr. Chair. We don't have to do something corporate, but it's out there. It's an opportunity. If you want to, as individual elected officials, you can do it.
I'll probably participate once I read into this a little bit more, but I'll be certainly probably writing one to look back. Okay? So if anyone wants to join me, I'll circulate a letter around, and if someone wants to add their names to it, we can do that. All right, moving on. Item 12.2 for your information. Moving on to item number 13, reports from legal entities. You all have a bunch of written reports, and if there anyone who wishes to do a verbal report, Councillor Daniel Allen.
Well, I'm going to try and be quick here. Mariner Center Management Authority has been, I don't know if I want to use the word entrusted, but we're working on getting Mariners on Main open, and I had the privilege of touring through with some of the other Management Authority people last week. It's coming along. I think they're trying to do a couple soft openings around the 1st of October and try and get going mid-October. They've done a lot of painting with the new colors that have been out on the new logo. It looks fantastic inside. It's not a new building. but it's clean, it's bright, it will get us to where we need to be to get into a new building. And I really want to express how much work the Mariners Center staff and the new staff at Mariners on Main are doing to get this going. Like, it's incredible what these guys and girls are doing out there. They're doing the painting, they're doing most of it themselves. We have a great guy working on the pool. Yeah, it's just amazing the job they're doing to get this up for the community and get it going so that the community has a place to go until we can actually get some dirt getting dug out at Mariner Center.
Thank you very much. In regards to the Yarmouth International Airport Corporation, we have been meeting throughout the summer. We've been having different meetings. As some of you know, we had no community representation. There was, I believe, 5 or 6 people that applied. I don't know if they've been notified on the selection, because we did select 3 different people. I can't say for sure if they've accepted the positions, but until I get confirmation they do via our next meeting, I'll certainly report back to council. But we did have 5 or 6, and we did pick 3, and they're 3 spectacular choices if they have accepted the positions. And also they're going to be staggered. One person will be taking 1 year, another person will be taking 2, and another person will be taking 3. So that means every year that we could either reappoint or go out for different community members. But I'm very happy to see the community has stepped up to try to help us with that asset of the 3 municipal units. That's my report on the Airport Corporation. Councillor Durkee, do you have a report in item 13.1, legal entities, or is this in the next one? Okay, Councillor Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to mention that the Western Counties Regional Library will be meeting tomorrow, and of course one of the big concerns that they're having to work on is the fact that as of October 4th, there will be a requirement to show a vaccine passport, whatever you want to call it, because I don't think they've really decided. They've talked about a vaccine policy, but I know that people are going to have to show that they've been vaccinated in order to get into it, so that'll be a big discussion tomorrow. Yarmouth and Acadian Shores Tourism Association was very happy to have brought in the 55 games, and as soon as I'm finished, I would ask, if possible, that Councillor Hilton maybe comment on that, because he attended that. And so I wish to thank everybody that was involved in that. Great time of year, a bit of a shoulder season, and it looks like we were busy, which I'm certainly helped the businesses in Yarmouth. And last but not least, the Western Regional Economic Network Liaison and Oversight Committee. There is an annual report attached to that, which highlights what has been going on at the Rend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durkee. Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Durkee. I'd asked if I could speak to the 55+ games because I volunteered, and thank you to the council for letting me speak at the opening ceremonies. I very much enjoyed the weekend. I attended track and field and a few other events, and I have to say everyone had a really good time. This is an event that happens every 2 years, and I know that the ask is already out there that Yarmouth hosts again as soon as 2 years from now. So the organizers, volunteers, and participants were all amazing, and I truly look forward to seeing. It was between 500 and 700 people here from away. Definitely different feeling than we've had for the past 18 months. There is still one more event, curling, to be held in November. So I invite you guys all to watch at that point. And just a thank you to the Bridge Committee of the Mariner Center for all the work they've done at the former the pool at 275 Main Street. And I too was lucky enough to have a tour, and it's bright, it's cheerful, and doesn't look anything like it used to. So, and I seen them painting the outside of it today. So look forward to no more red building, and look forward to seeing what color they chose. Cheers.
Thank you. Is that it for legal entities? Moving on to 13.2, advisory committees. Is there any, you all have some written reports, is there any verbal? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to brief comment on accessibility advisory. We're moving forward. We have some discussions coming up at our next meeting, the beginning of October, on how, we've already had our survey results back, and we're looking at doing some community engagement. I'm not sure what format that will take at this point, but looking forward to that. And the Heritage Advisory Committee, I had asked staff for a report, so we had passed the rebate policy, and to date we have 5 heritage property applications, and the deadline isn't until September 30th, so if people have a heritage property and they haven't applied, they still have time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I comment on the Doctor Recruitment and Retention Committee, which you will find a report attached, I just want to say that, of course, our new government has made doctor recruitment and retention high priority, and that I wish to thank our community navigator, who will continue for the work that she has done over the past, during the past couple years. It's one of those situations where, you know, we get some new ones and then some leave, and then we get some new ones and then some leave. So it's, you know, it's a revolving door, but I have to say that for those who have been leaving, they have, from my understanding is that the doctors are happy here. It's not that they're happy with our system or our hospital or the people. It's just often for family reasons, or they want something more challenging, that they are leaving. However, that being said, in our most recent Community Navigator Oversight Committee meeting, we have a lot of people who are interested and who are getting in contact directly with our community navigator because they're being referred by other doctors who have come here. And so it's really positive, and we're very lucky, and I'm looking forward to hearing, you know, about more people who are coming to Yarmouth. So, you know, again, our numbers are fluctuating up and down, and I look forward to hear what our provincial government's going to be doing to support this. And I know today there was supposed to be a meeting with the frontline workers to see how they feel about healthcare and what changes need to be made. The other comment I'd like to make, and with council's approval, I'm asking for an addition, which would be a quick NSFM report. If
Is that okay by council?
If our
I have
council
no issues
agrees.
with that. Yep, go ahead.
Okay,
There's no
thank you.
dissenting opinion.
We had a recent meeting on Friday. We were introduced to the Honorable John Lohr, which is the new Minister of Municipal Affairs. Deputy Minister Paul LaFleche was on the call, as well as Associate Deputy Minister Mark Peck. We also had a report from PBSC. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that, you know, we know there have been lots of sales and turnovers in Nova Scotia. Our real estate industry has been pretty hot. And because PBSC does their assessment based on market values, they said there's just no question that our taxes are going to be going up, or the assessments are going to be going up, and there's really, unfortunately, not a lot that can be done about it. However, people can apply for the cap, which is still in existence. In addition, there's a meeting coming up on Tuesday about resolutions, which I believe I forwarded, as well as our CAO. Thank you very much. And a reminder also about the upcoming conference in November, and information has been sent to you, and it can also be found on the NSFM website, and it's time to do the early bird registration. The other thing I need to remind everybody about, we had a discussion with the CAO of NSFM today, is that we all have to be reminded that the Safe Restart funds that were given, and we received $592,000, came from work by the NSFM. It was a huge package of work done by the staff of the NSFM. And just to let you know and remind you that it set the standards for all across Canada, that we were the first people who actually came forward with a report, thanks to our CAOs who provided the information to staff at NSFM to say how much does everybody need. And so that federal government money went to the province and was distributed to across Nova Scotia. So I know that one of the things we'll be looking for is how people used money, and I know we've used 200 and change for. So it was a big project for NSFM, and again, we set the standard, and that which was pretty amazing. Thank you.
Councillor Durkee, before you turn off your microphone, I did have one question in regards to doctor recruitment. I do know that the new Premier, Tim Houston, has appointed a minister of, I believe it was doctor recruitment, and I'm wondering how that's going to either impact or help our group, and are you guys reaching out to I want to say it's Minister Carla McFarland, I think, but I'm not exactly sure on that. So I'm just wondering if the committee's aware in that regards. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The committee is aware, and we're not sure how they're going to restructure. You know, the stage has been set for many years, and it's not going to change overnight, and this is going to be a long process. What we all have to remember is that the province is responsible for doctor recruitment, but quite frankly, our communities are responsible for retention, which
Absolutely.
means that, you know, it's up to us to set the stage, to welcome people, to introduce people, to provide, you know, the provincial government doesn't look for housing for doctors who are coming here, and that's the job of our community navigator, and I can tell you that's a huge job of hers to try and help people with housing, which we know is also a huge issue across the province. So I suspect, I can't assume anything, of course, but I do suspect there'll still be a need for local input. And I do believe I heard something from the Premier Houston that, yes, that they're going to be some probably departments may be going back to the specific regions, but that's,
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could, the next meeting, maybe you should add that. I'm just asking. Maybe that should be added to maybe one of your agenda items to see where we move forward and see if we can figure out how the province is moving on this, because you're absolutely right. It's up to the province to recruit the doctors, but it's up to groups like we have, like the committee that you sit on, to find places and have a navigator to help them and do all that other stuff. I just want to make sure that we're on the front line, because there's many people out there that don't have family doctors, and there's also different positions, anesthesiologists, surgeons, other different areas that are open around here, and we certainly would like to fill them as quickly as possible and retain them. And thank you very much for the work you do. And actually, we had with Rebecca Rose here, one of our committee of the wholes, and unfortunately we were just starting. I don't remember if the writ was dropped then or not. But
Right.
yeah, but just keep that on your back burner.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I don't think anybody knows yet to
No.
what they're going to do, but I can guarantee you, between the Chamber of Commerce, myself, Community Navigator and the Community Navigator Advisory Committee, that we'll all be on top of that.
Oh,
and to see
absolutely.
how we can support and help.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you very much, Councillor Durkee, for those detailed reports. Deputy Warden.
Yes, just like to report from our latest Yarmouth Recreation Joint Committee meeting, and it was at the Milo Boat Club last week. And what I'd like to report is certainly recreation staff are very involved in the Lake Milo active transportation route project, and working with the consultants and making suggestions and all those types of things. So that's one thing. They do have a sprint kayak camp, and sprint kayaks are those kayaks that you kind of see, the racing kayaks that you kind of kneel in, They have the dragon boats there too, but this is a sprint kayak, and there's a person in the community that actually is out there. They're expert in the area, and they are running the camps, and it's quite something to see. I haven't seen it yet, but I plan to get down another year and certainly watch them. And anyway, the kids are really taking to it, and they're making progress, and recreation staff is trying to get some additional sprint kayaks for the area. And again, I guess we're contemplating some improvements to the Rotary Park facility, some showers potentially, and so forth. So, and again, they've been very, very involved in the 55-plus games. So those are some of the big pieces that I wanted to report from Joint Recreation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just to add to Councillor Cunningham's report on the Yarmouth Recreation, we do have our 2 citizen reps that are with us now, new ones, and they seem to be very eager to learn and to see what lack of better words, what their job will be, right? So it was interesting to have a conversation with them. So, but anyway, yeah, that was it was a good meeting, and we got to the point, like I say, Frank and his staff, they really did an excellent job, and it was one of our first meetings we've had since we got shut down. We did have one lined up, but it was canceled because of an emergency meeting with us, with our council. But 2 of our recreation staff were hired on, I think it was the week before the shutdown came to, or something like this. So they were really had to learn a lot from being just sitting in the office and they did an incredible job in trying to piece things together. So the recreation staff are very dedicated, and they've done a good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that it for advisory? Moving on, ad hoc. The Mariner Center Expansion Committee's met here just recently on a few different items. We're moving forward. We recently set out an RFP for fundraising. We did recently have a meeting with National. It was a very good meeting. A lot of names were thrown around in regards to movement on our next steps, in regards to making sure that this is in the forefront of the new provincial and frankly the federal governments, because even though the Prime Minister Trudeau got elected, there's also going to be a new cabinet there as well. So National's on top of making sure of who to get in contact, and any ministers or MLAs, make sure all of our council, make sure if you see them, please mention Mariner Center. We need that expansion. So, because as we all know, the Mariners on Main was only intended to be the bridge until the new facility's built. So, just make sure that that's on everyone's mind. Any politician or any deputy minister you come in contact with, just mention Mariner Center. Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just wanted to about the Lake Model Act of Transportation. Our CAO certainly outlined things in her CAO report and how the project is proceeding very well. But I will encourage those watching, view her report so they can actually see what a good job our committee is doing. And it is a very interesting project, and it seems like we get different government agencies on board. In theory, they haven't put no money forward because there's been no budget made yet. But anyway, we seem like we're going in the right direction, and I'd just like anybody watching just to review the CAO report, and you'll certainly get a good view of what we're doing and where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's it for ad hoc. Moving on to the warden's report, you all have that in your package, and even though there's a lot of COVID restrictions going on, there's been certainly a lot of meetings, and a lot of those meetings were held via Zoom. Now we're in phase 4. Restrictions are starting to lift, and was October the 4th, maybe phase 5 will be engaged, provided our numbers stay low. And there's one thing that I did not mention in here that I think that deserves a public acknowledgement by the Municipality District of Yarmouth. SHIFT just recently celebrated their 10 years in service to the community. Their motto, "Every youth needs a home," is absolutely correct, and I personally, on behalf of council, would like to thank all the volunteers and of the SHIFT movement, and hopefully that they continue on, because that's a service that's been part of serving our tri-counties for the past 10 years, as I just stated. And unfortunately, I do know a couple people personally that's benefited from their services, and actually one of them lives out in my community now, and they are ever grateful for the help that organization gave them. So thank you very much on behalf of the Municipality District of Yarmouth. All right, moving on. Councilor Durkee?
I just want to share a piece of good news, and that is that residents in Brazil Lake are now ready or able to sign on for rural internet. Woohoo! Fiber has been installed, and if anybody in that area, if you call them, they will schedule a date that they will come out and do the install. So that's really good news.
Yes, internet is certainly moving forward fast and furious now. 4,200 homes, I think, have been already. I think that's a number. Pardon me? Yeah, at the speed of light. People who have it, it's been a phenomenal service. Like I just mentioned, the cell tower in Kemp, that is actually scheduled to be hooked up to that, and hopefully that will alleviate some of the cellular issues that we're having around the communities. So absolutely, it's in my district, but thank you very much. It also goes up to your district. I don't think they've put the live wire up on the Annis Road yet, but that's going to be very shortly. Oh, it is. Oh, so it's gone. It's gone through the Lake George.
Jesse Road is set up to go.
I'm not going to ask why you know that. All right, any in-camera items? We had an in-camera item earlier, so there's none. There's no recommendations from in-camera, so I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Sherry Hurlbert. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Lauren Cushion. Motion on the floor to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you very much, council, and thank you very much to all the public that's been watching.